Hi, this is Brian. Welcome to Philosopher's Notes TV. Today, as always, great book. Today we have Brian Tracy's Focal Point, one of the most inspiring teachers, Brian Tracy, that I've studied, totally deeply influenced me. As always, great book, 6-page PDF Philosopher's Note. I've got like 15 big ideas from this book in the note. Brian is a big idea machine. His books are literally one small big idea after another. And like I said, he's been one of my biggest inspirations. He's really inspiring and really practical. So I just dig him. And he's really a broad thinker as well. I've listened to a lot of his audio tapes as well that I highly recommend. I mentioned some more of them in the note. Other books that I love, Goals, Eat That Frog. He's got a bunch of just great stuff. So Brian Tracy, today, Focal Point. The subtitle is A Proven System to Simplify Your Life, Double Your Productivity, and Achieve All Your Goals. So audacious subtitle, and the book really lives up to it. So here are some of my favorite big ideas. The first one is, I am responsible. Brian goes off on how important it is that we choose to be responsible for our lives. And we talk about this again and again and again and again and again and again. It's just huge. So Stephen Covey says, habit number one, we've got to be proactive. Many times in these notes, we talk about the word responsible and how if you break it down, it's really two words, response, able. We're able to choose our response. We aren't a stimulus response reactive machine. We're response able. And we say, look, I'm not going to make excuses. And I think it was The Magic of Thinking Big. We talked about excusitis. It's a dreaded disease that affects all average people and failures to one degree or another, the author says, right? So we need to stop making excuses, accept responsibility for our lives, and do our best. That's a huge idea. Big. So Brian also talks about the fact that everything is hard before it's easy. And he quotes Goethe, one of my favorite guys, who says everything is hard before it's easy. So we may need to exert tremendous discipline in order to break old habits and create new habits. But as we do that, our life just gets on a channel where things become more and more effortless. But we've got to remember the metaphor of a rocket or a space shuttle, right? It takes so much energy to get the space shuttle up and out of the gravitational pull of our atmosphere, right? I don't know what percentage it is, but it's huge. The percentage of energy required to get out of the gravitational pull of our atmosphere. But once the space shuttle is on the other side of that, or a rocket is on the other side of that gravitational pull, the amount of energy it takes to make tweaks is very small. So it's the same in our lives, right? This is a common story, but it's so powerful. It's same thing goes with our lives. We need to exert a lot of energy sometimes to break out of our old habits, our old gravitational pull that holds us down. But once we make a few big changes, things can become easy. So everything is hard before it's easy. Too often, we just want to do what's easy. That's not going to work. It takes, again, the diligence, patience, persistence. And when we see that, we can make it playful and make it fun. He's got a great big idea here. In the note, I'll go back for a second. What habits can you build in your life, right? What's the number one habit? It's the question I love to ask all the time. What's the number one habit you could start building in your life right now that would have the most positive benefit in your life? I got that from Brian Tracy. That's adapted from his stuff. He asks that question all the time. What's the number one thing you could start doing that would have the most positive benefit in your life? What's the number one thing you could stop doing that if you stopped doing it would have the most positive benefit in your life? If you've watched these episodes, you've heard me ask that question at least a half a dozen, maybe a dozen times now. The question is, have you paused and thought about it? And are you living according to that? Whenever I'm stressed or overwhelmed, I go to those two questions and I say, what do I need to start doing more of? And what do I need to start doing less of? What do I need to stop doing? It's an amazing compass for us to get clarity and really take our life on the track we want. So I'd suggest you press pause, think about that. In the note, we've got some space for some journaling. But contemplate that. And remember, everything's hard before it's easy, but that's what makes life fun. Another big idea, zero-based thinking. So Brian has a great idea here. Imagine this. Imagine asking yourself, okay, let's just assume that I could restart anything. And ask yourself the question, is there anything in my life that if I was going to start doing it right now, I would never start doing it? Is there anything in my life that if I was going to start doing it right now, that I wouldn't start doing again? Right? Knowing what you now know, would you start that behavior again? It's a really big idea. It's called zero-based thinking. We zero-base our thinking and say, look, let me take an inventory of my life. Is there anything, any relationships, any jobs or projects or activities that I'm engaged in that, knowing what I know now, I'd never start again? It's a good thing to do an inventory on often and to check in and to get in the habit of correcting things that may not be working. Doesn't mean you need to completely blow it up, but it might mean you need to significantly change them and create new behaviors and habits around those activities or those people. But get clear on that and then be more conscious of not starting things that you don't feel really, really good about. Another really big idea, flexibility. He says, and he cites some research that we talk about in the note, that flexibility is the most important characteristic for healthy, functioning, successful people in the 21st century. And I talk about this often, but I like to think of flexibility. One of my other friends and teachers, Dan Siegel, says, flexibility is the river that flows between the banks of chaos and rigidity. We can be too chaotic and spontaneous or too rigid and inflexible. Flexibility flows between that. We're open, we're receptive, we're moving with the world. And one way to do that is to zero-base our thinking, right? And to come back to that often. Really, really big idea. Brian Tracy is all about effective planning. And he says that every minute that you spend in planning saves you 10 in execution. Isn't that a big idea? It's kind of like habit number 7 from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, sharpening the saw. Too often we're sawing with a dull blade. And we want to spend the time sharpening our saw so we can be more effective. Same thing with planning. Before rushing into something, why don't you spend a minute or 2 or 5 or 10 or 60, then actually map out what you want to do. If Tracy's numbers are right, you're going to see that you're going to save 10 minutes for every 1 minute you invest in planning. That's a really big idea. I love practicing with that one. Here's one of my favorite big ideas of all of them. Single-mindedly one-touching is what I call it. So Brian's got some great ideas on this. So imagine one-touching something, right? Single-mindedly doing something until it's done. Too often, we start something and then we get distracted. And then we come back to it and then we got to remember where we were and then we do a little more work and then we get distracted. Then we come back. It's very, 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 very inefficient way to do things. Brian says one of the key ways you can get into your focal point is to identify what the most important things are that need to get done and then single-mindedly focus on it until it's done. Your productivity will explode when you do that. I've certainly seen it in my life. One of the things I do from a mundane perspective, when I get mail, I usually, not always, my productivity is going to go up even higher when I make this an always practice, get the mail out, take it, open it, write the checks, send the checks, walk the mail back out with the bills. Done. One touching. Versus getting the mail out, having it sit there, so you look at it and, well, I wonder what's in the mail over there. And then you kind of open it, and then you don't write the checks, you're thinking about it. Open loops, not a good idea. Single-handedly, or single-mindedly one touch it. Another big thing for me is email. I get a lot of email. I've got a lot of rules set up and stuff, and I'll do a video on how I do that soon. But I also one-touch my email. If it's going to take me less than 2 minutes to reply, I reply immediately, less than 5 minutes really. I one-touch it. I hate letting emails build up into my inbox. So there's a mundane example of how to rock that. We're already out of time, but check out the note. Brian's like a question machine as well. He's got awesome, inspiring questions to help us find our purpose. You can see them in the note, get them in the book. Hope you enjoyed. Share more with you soon. See ya.